So you may have noticed in the news that the United States is starting to get a little too close for comfort to the Solomon Islands. Now, Ben, why are you talking about this? If the U.S. wants to send people to the Solomon Islands, like diplomatic people, what's it matter? Well, the reason it matters is because the Solomon Islands are now kind of playing out this weird geopolitics that we're starting to see. The United States is losing its is effectively losing its title as lead hegemon, as the only hegemonic or imperial power in the world at this point, and China is on the rise. Now, the thing that is interesting about China's rise is that China is trying to use the Belt and Road Initiative as their primary driver of their colonial expansion. And I've talked about the Belt and Road Initiative a number of times on this show, including just a few weeks ago. But essentially, China is offering a lot of carrots, and they're to people who will kind of sign on to them. And this signing on is not just economic; it also allows for the Chinese to establish military bases, which should sound familiar to Americans because establishing military bases in other countries is like our job here in the U.S. So the Solomon Islands are a little too close to the U.S. for the U.S.'s comfort for China to be building a military base, and the U.S. has sent diplomatic staff there to essentially, I mean, let's be real, beg for the Solomon Islands to not let the Chinese build a military base there. Now, I personally think that this is all a bit silly because the chance that the U.S. and China ever engage in actual warfare is very, very small. Not just because if there was a war, it's entirely possible would end humanity as we know it and both countries, but also because the economies of China and the U.S. are super closely intertwined. And we learned this lesson very hard during the pandemic, where as soon as China started shutting things down, our economy took a nosedive. The economies are extremely close, and so the chance that there is a war between China and the U.S. is actually very small. Now, what's more likely to happen is that you have a number of proxy wars where the U.S. funds one side, China funds the other side. This is not as dangerous as the two powers going to war with each other. However, it does still present a number of dangers, and of course, there are going to be innocent people caught in the crossfire who die needlessly. Obviously, we don't want that. So, it seems to me that the United States is convinced that the latter is either likely or they're concerned the latter will happen. So they've sent diplomatic staff to the Solomon Islands to kind of beg and plead that they don't allow the Chinese to build a military base there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Truthfully, you know, we probably have actually no, we militarily we militarily support Taiwan, who is very close to China. So I imagine, and by the way, the Solomon Islands actually ain't that close to the US, but it's just kind of closer than China is, right? By a good margin. And it's close enough to Hawaii. So, you know, there's some concern there from the US. I get that. But what I'll say is, even if China put a military base there, they really wouldn't be in any position to harm the United States. And so I think the whole thing's a little bit overblown. But, you know, we in the US have this concept of national security that essentially expands a giant bubble around the US, right? It's not good and well enough for the US, the 50 states, to be secure, but we also like to have lots of proxies and allies around the world, and specifically kind of close proximity to us, kind of our sphere of influence is what we would have called it during the Cold War, where we have nations who essentially will do what we ask them to, or will be our allies should there be a conflict, or they're our ideological ally. So China appears to be stepping into our sphere of influence, very likely trying to expand their sphere of influence. And so we just kind of get to this weird position where the Chinese government is essentially doing in America, and America decides, well, shit, we don't like that. So it turns out it's okay to do in America if you're in America, but not okay to do in America if you're not in America. But jokes aside, I think we will have to wait and see how the U.S. reacts to this. I imagine that the Solomon Islands is taking what the U.S. says seriously, but they already have open communication channels with China, so it's entirely possible they do let the Chinese build a base there. And if they did that, I'm not sure how the U.S. would react. I do not think that we would take military force. Right, we definitely don't want to be engaged in warfare with China for a variety of reasons, some of which I listed off already, but you know, might we do other things? Might we try and topple the government of the Solomon Islands and put someone there who's more U.S. friendly? I don't know. There are a lot of things the U.S. has done when it's thought it's desperate. So, we'll just have to see kind of what the deal is, how the US reacts and how China reacts. And by the way, it's entirely possible that China reacts too, right? We could be looking at a situation where the Chinese government says, hey, the US are kind of really getting, are really getting upset about this. Maybe we should back off. Maybe we don't build a military base, maybe we build like a port or something. And by the way, I don't think that the Chinese government cares very much what the US thinks. But remember, we are a long-term strategic and economic partner of China, so it's entirely possible that there's just some posturing that goes on so that the Chinese can kind of maintain the benefits that they get from the relationship with us and vice versa without, having to go through the whole rigmarole of an international incident between the US and China. So I think both sides are just kind of posturing a little bit. I think there's going to be some level where I don't know if there'll be like a negotiated settlement or whatever, but the Solomon Islands, very small country, not a ton of defense capabilities, but they are a strategic location. The U.S. calls them a strategic ally. So again, it'll be interesting. So if there's any updates on this story, I will definitely let you guys know. I think it's going to be, I just don't know. I don't know. So we'll see. Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you liked it, throw a like on it, share with your friends, and subscribe for more of our content. You can also find all of our videos and clips on youtube.com. Just search Let Them Eat Bread and you'll find all of our content. Alright guys, see you next time. Bye for now.